Hello and welcome again to the Marvels of Water. We're looking at hydrotherapy during this series, and in today's presentation we're going to be touching on contrast baths. When we think about contrast baths, we're looking at hot and cold. All right, let's look at some of the uses for contrast baths, that is our indications. It could be impaired circulation. And we talked about from the intro video, if we want to have good health, we must have good circulation. Contrast baths are a good remedy to reestablish good circulation. So impaired circulation, also inflammation, sprains, strains, colds, flu, sinusitis, nasal congestion. Many of these can be remedied by using the contrast baths. Now, there again, we have a precaution, or that is a contraindication for someone who is diabetic, that is, who have lost sensation in their lower extremities, their feet, ankles. If they're having that problem, that loss of sensation, we want to hold off putting their feet in the hot water. We don't want it to cause any more oxidative stress to those areas. So if they have that problem, then we want to avoid doing this. So contrast baths. Let's go a little further. Now, as we consider this, the contrast bath, I want to say first that we can look at doing a contrast shower. Some of those same things that we were looking at, contrast bath, we can start with a contrast shower. There's a lot of things going on right now. People are suffering from colds, flu, viruses, these types of things. And if you did a contrast shower every day, you would greatly enable your immune response to fight off many of the challenges that are coming to people these days. And the way you would want to do that is you would want to get into the shower and turn on the hot water. We're not talking about hot that is going to cause harm, but hot, nice and warm to your tolerance for 3 minutes. So hot water for a nice hot shower for nice 3 minutes. And then you want to turn that off and turn the cold on for 30 seconds. I know just a mere thought about that, and you're saying, I can't do it, I can't. Yes, you can. So take a nice hot shower for 3 minutes and then turn to the cold for 30 seconds. Okay, so that's one round. And you want to do at least 3 rounds. I recommend anywhere from 5 to 7 rounds. And what that will do is that will boost up, that will ramp up your body's vital processes. It will engage your immune system. As a matter of fact, this hot and cold treatment remedy is looked at as a body tonic, an overall body tonic, where it will enable your system to work more optimally, fighting off whatever pathological condition that may be trying to get you down, colds, flu, viruses, or whatever it is. So I would highly recommend a contrast shower. All right, so now I mentioned some other things that could be happening. I'm going to have my friend Joel come over and help me once again. And let's say, hi, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. Would you have a seat, please? Now, let's say that Joel was doing something, he was working, and let's say he sprained his or strained his wrist or something like that. Now, usually if you twist an ankle, you do a sprain or something like that, it would be good to go with the rice method for at least the first 24 to 48 hours. You mean, what do you mean rice? Are we talking about food now? No. RICE is an acronym that's for rest, ice, compression, and elevation. Let's say if it's a foot. All right, so if it's let's say just for sake of ease, because it's easier to see this, let's say he sprained his wrist. All right, so after we do that, the rice method, that is, we want to rest, ice it, compress some maybe ACE wrap or something, and elevation for about the first 24 to 48 hours. Then after that, what we can do now is we can use the contrast bath. So what I would do is I would dip the wrist or the foot or whatever area it's been sprained or strained in this nice warm, in this nice hot water for 3 minutes. And you're going to need to time it. So for 3 minutes, and then ding, after the 3 minutes are up, then we're going to place this in here for 30 seconds. Now, while he's in there for 30 seconds, what I want to do is I want to have some nice hot water, and then I want to pour a little in and warm that up, all right? So then after 30 seconds are up, then he's going to come back in there for another 3 minutes. And while he's in there, over here in the cold side, what I will begin to do is take maybe a few ice cubes and then to put that in the cold side. Then after 3 minutes, then I'm going to put it back here in the cold. Now notice this, that was 2 rounds. Each time you do a hot and then cold, that's 1 round. So now we're doing the hot and cold here for 30 seconds. That now is 2 rounds. And I would suggest that maybe you do anywhere from 5 to 7 rounds. I like the number 7. 7, I don't know, the number of completion. We can see many times in the Bible that the number 7 is equated with something that is good, that's something that's blessing. Like, for instance, the 7th day is a blessing there. So 5 to 7 times would be good. So that's a demonstration for, let's say, if he was having something wrong with his wrist. But now let's say he's having some sinusitis or some sinus congestion. Well, you do the same thing. 3 minutes in the hot, 30 seconds in the cold, and you could have him to place his face in this. All right, now I won't have Joel to put this in his mouth, but you can use your imagination. This is a snorkel. And so what he's going to do is he's going to place his face. If you were having a sinus inflammation or congestion or anything like that, sinusitis, you could use a snorkel, and that would allow you to breathe underwater for 3 minutes. Well, some people have snorkeled, some people are used to this and they're okay with it. I've done this with some people and they feel a little uncomfortable. So in that case, maybe they might have to hold their breath for as long as they can, which is usually only a few seconds to a minute, and then go to the cold side. It's better with this. Some people can use a straw, a flexible straw. If they don't have one of these, you can get this from a toy store or maybe a dollar store. Very cheap thing right here. And you can use one of these. This will allow you to breathe. You can't breathe quite as easily through a straw because you don't have as much room to breathe through. But try this, and I think you will like it. Also, I want to mention that when you do it from the sinus, you want to add just a little salt in it. It helps to take away some of the irritation that you might feel in your nose. So let's say he's having a sinus infection, and then what we're going to do, we're going to time him. He's going to go in the warm water for 3 minutes, all right? And then ding, all right, then we're going to go in the cold water for 30 seconds, all right? And then we're going to go back to the warm water for 3 minutes. And then when 3 minutes are up, remember your timing, and then we're going to go back to the cold water for 30 seconds. Okay, there again, as I said, thank you. We want to continue this for 5 to 7 rounds. And then at the end of this, let's say for sinus inflammation, sinusitis, or something like this, what you want to do is have a box of tissue around and also a waste paper basket. And then you want to encourage them after this is to blow their nose. Blow as much as they can to get out all of that mucus that has been loosened up. And I've seen from experience, after a few rounds of this and the person blows, well, plenty comes out and they're able to clean themselves out pretty well. So you might want to try this, and even you yourself, you will see what great relief that this can bring. These are the contrast baths, and we can use them for many wonderful effects. Thank you, the contrast bath. Try it, and remember, practice it and become proficient.